By the way, just hold it there. Before you answer that, do you want to answer how old are you? So for context.
People are always asking me this question.
Yes, just for the context, so people understand, because they might put a lot of pressure on you for you to know a lot of things that you did not grow up in that era.
Yeah.
So do you wanna explain to them, or when were you born? Let's just put it there. When were you born?
2000.
2000.
Yeah.
So only 2000.
Yeah.
So guys, I'm hosting the 2000 la Zimbabwe. let's see how far we get with this. So because I want to understand when you grew up, just how much of.
Because so Zimbabweans who can't afford DSTV will have something like OpenView, or I don't know if it still exists, but then when I was a kid there was something called Westech, and those had SABC 1, 2 and 3, and then there was also BTV from Botswana. And so because
those were free to air.
Yes, those were free. And then there was also ZBC, but then ZBC, that's the Zimbabwean broadcasting channel. But there's only one. And so it's not like we were going out of our way to consume more South African and Western content. It's because there wasn't a lot of local content to watch. So like most of us also grew up watching Generations Isting or ETC and stuff. And
spoke about Matebele. So Matebele is what the
Sotho people called Ndebele.
And it's stuck as Matebele. Do you guys take offense when you are called Matebele?
I think not. It's strange for me when people consider us Matebele, because when we're in Zimbabwe, it's just Ndebele.
If you can just say it's quite a few. I want to understand something. How many South African boyfriends have you had since you came here?
Since I came here, I've had 2 South African partners.
And then Zimbabwean?
4 or 5.
Okay, so it's more. So you, even if you are in South Africa, you're still gravitating towards your.
Not necessarily. The reason why I've had more Zimbabwean boyfriends is because. Okay. So, just to round up in one sentence what I was saying before.
Yes.
I do believe that removing sanctions might not make a difference. But we'll see. I guess we'll see. It's up to the government to prove people wrong. Then what you asked, you asked me many different things. Do I think the Kukura Hundi thing is why Mnangagwa isn't removed from sanctions? Yes, definitely. Because he was, apart from Kukura Hundi, there were also the whole situation where the land reform situations where farms were being taken from white farmers. That was part of the reason why they were also put on the sanctions list, but then also human rights violations after that. And so many entities and individuals were removed from the US sanctions list, but Mnangagwa and the people who are at the top of ZANU-PF were left there on the sanctions list. Then the third question that you asked, how do I feel about Rutendo when he's like speaking good about ZANU-PF and stuff like that, and that everything is great? So I feel like for him, this person is very privileged. Criminals, as if high crime rates didn't exist during apartheid, because they did. The crime rates existed because economically, as much as SA's economy is good, it doesn't really benefit the average black person because it was set up to benefit white people. And what happened was Mandela just said, you guys are now free, but then not a lot was done for equity to close the wealth gap, which is why South Africa is the most unequal country in the world. But then, sorry, I'm now digressing, but then I'm just like looking at different factors for a person
embrace people coming from outside Zimbabwe.
Yeah, because we even have refugee camps for refugees from other African countries. As most people know,
as in camps, tents, camps, or maybe just segregated areas. So in South Africa, we don't have refugee camps. They come, they integrate, they live amongst us.
Okay, maybe the best word is to say refugee communities.
Okay.
Maybe one of the most well-known is the Josiah Tongogara refugee camp,
Yes.
where that's where.
Is it wrong for me to think Zo comes from a well-off family, Uchizgel, ne?
I mean, I suppose. I mean, the middle class doesn't exist in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll say that I'm upper working class.
Yes.
I think I am.
A Ndebele woman, Ndebele young woman, you feel you are represented politically with people from Mtwagazi not being politically, without having political elites in there. Do you vote on tribal lines? Do you think parties like ZANU-PF, who are more aligned with the Shonas,
Yeah.
cater for you as a young?
No.
A lot of English when they are with, when they're in a circle.
Okay, when I'm with Shona people, if we're in a mixed circle, we typically speak in English.
Yes.
Or if they grew up in Bulawayo.
Actually, 2,000 guys, just 2,000 will speak more English. So that's why I wanted that disclaimer. So it's
Okay.
important because I want to understand when it's typically a lot of people.
Okay.
What language would they gravitate to?
Okay, if it's mostly Ndebele people, we will mix.
My African people, today I've got Uzo. I'm gonna call her Zo, and she'll explain why she's called Zo. And Zolega, please tell them who you are and where you're from.
Okay. I'm Zolega Mazibugo. I'm from Bulawayo in Zimbabwe. Yeah, most people know me from my TikTok page where I typically discuss African issues. Yeah, I just give social commentary. But then other than that, I am currently studying law and did some political science. But I'm also a freelance social commentary writer. And so my TikTok videos are sort of an extension of that. And yeah, I think those are probably the most important things.
All right.
All right. I'm also a qualitative researcher as well. I do have some published work. Yeah.
Okay. So you're an overall social commentator.
Yes.
Zoleka. So what now I'm gonna call you Zo. Is
Okay.
it fine?
Yeah.
So Zo, when did you come to South Africa?
I came in 2019 when I started doing my law and political science.
Okay.
Before that, I've been in Zimbabwe. I've been in Bulawayo.
For the rest of your life.
Yeah.
How was it coming to South Africa? What made you choose South Africa? And were you not scared of xenophobia?
Okay. So I chose South Africa because of how culturally similar it is to Zim. So I wouldn't experience the level of homesickness and feeling out of place as I would maybe if I went overseas or something like that. And so, yeah, as a Ndebele person, I relate strongly to South African culture. Well, especially Nguni people, given the fact that we Zimbabwean Ndebeles descend from Zulu people, and we also incorporated a lot of South African ethnicities like Basotho and stuff like that.
Yes.
And so I could relate to you guys and your culture as well. And so I haven't felt out of place at all since I got here. So that's why I chose to study in South Africa.
Yes.
And also because I could visit my parents.
Yeah.
As frequently as I needed. And was I scared of xenophobia? Yes. Yes, to some degree.
Yeah.
But I just came with a positive mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're saying if I've been to Mozambique, Swaziland, Botswana. I'm not well traveled. I have not been to Zim. So I have to tell you, those few countries that I've been at,
Yeah,
it's almost like I'm in South Africa
exactly.
because of the languages.
Yeah,
And this is what Africa should be.
exactly.
So
And that's what Africa was before we were colonized.
so I'm not sure about that. There isn't, there are a lot of South Africans, and maybe mostly, but Africans, they believe we are one, right? And of course, I one who subscribe to One Africa.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go into that debate that you think I'm going into. Would you care if South Africa incorporates all of this neighboring states and you guys become provinces of South Africa? Does it matter to you?
I don't think it would be
The attempt, by the way, is to kill the word xenophobia
okay.
and kwere. The attempt is just to kill that.
All right. I do think it's a bit problematic to be like, what if we incorporated other countries to be provinces of South Africa? Because already there's like a power imbalance and the assumption that, well, South Africa is the main character in the situation and like we're just there as people who are adopted. I feel like I wouldn't mind if we were to unite, right? But then I think making it something that revolves up around South Africa would be problematic because it would alienate the rest of us. And yeah, so I'm honestly not opposed to just the idea of like Southern African countries uniting and everything. I'm a Pan-African and I'm always talking about the fact that, the current borders that we have today were imposed on us by colonizers during the scramble for Africa. They literally looked at the map and they drew imaginary lines according to their interests, whether it was access to ports or wanting our natural resources and stuff like that. So literally the current borders that we have now are irrelevant to our interests today. So I do strongly support the idea of open borders, especially when you compare with, for example, the EU, whereby these are individual countries, yes, but then they have open borders. You can freely seek economic opportunities in other countries and stuff like that. And so while they are borders, they're not really that concrete, because for 6 months before I came here, I was living in France and Switzerland. So I was living in France and working in Switzerland because Switzerland is expensive. And like you could literally just walk across from Switzerland to France. The borders, they are not the way that they are today. And the unfortunate thing is that a lot of our communities were separated from each other, which is why when I make my videos about Zimbabwean ethnicities that people don't know about, people are like, what? There are closer people in Zimbabwe. They are Botswana. And it's like, no shit, because they are borders. Because the communities were one until they were separated. The Venda community in Zim and the Venda community in South Africa were one until they turned Limpopo River, which was just a river for us, into a border. Same thing for the Balozi and Donga people in Victoria Falls, where these people freely paddled across Zambezi River to each other until Zambezi River was made into a border between Zambia and Zimbabwe. And so I do genuinely advocate for the idea of open borders, but I do think saying that it should still be South Africa but with other countries as provinces is a little problematic because of I think it would be a sort of like an equal power dynamic in a way, yeah.
So you are only opposed to the idea because South Africa will look like it's the dominant one?
Yes.
Okay, it's fine. So shout out to Magriza Made Me Cook. So he creates content. So he gives me a lot of insight into Zimbabwe, and I consume a lot of his content, and I love what he does. Magriza Made Me Cook is like it's an eye into Zimbabwe. So he's one of those who made me want to also be a content creator, because there are things about Zimbabwe, and that's why you are here. There are things about Zimbabwe that are of interest to us because we are just one. We are just one people. It's unfortunate that the representation of Zimbabweans to most South Africans is the negative connotation that goes with it.
Very.
And so I tell a lot of Nigerians that don't blame South Africans for seeing you in a bad light. Everyone in the world sees you in a bad light because it's what you guys chose to trade. You understand? And so there are good things coming from Zimbabwe, and that's what I want to do. I want to celebrate that. So you spoke about crossing the border, and I watched someone who was crossing the border, and I find it very difficult. And amongst the things that I want us for you to be a province in South Africa is well, if the problem is the name South Africa, maybe the name could be changed.
Yeah.
Is that as Africans we'll stop seeing each other as Likwere. You understand?
Yeah.
And that is the purpose, because once that is reduced, and once we start killing tribalism, we start killing. You spoke about Limpopo River. In Mtwagazi, Munyati River separates you guys from Shonas, and even if it's a physical boundary, but it's also a mental boundary. The people that side are not of our own, and part of this is to say Mtwagazi becomes a province, and Mashonaland also becomes a province. Whatever it is, as long as we can find peace, because this is just a compromise.
Yeah.
But please tell us who. Okay, I'm just going to go. There are many. In fact, just tell them how many official languages are in Zimbabwe, because that is very interesting. The official languages in Zimbabwe.
Okay. So something that many users in my comment sections about my videos about Zimbabwean languages get really surprised about is that we have 16 official languages.
Amongst the biggest in the world.
Yes. And we share 7 of them with South Africa. So our official languages, it's Ndebele, Shona, Xhosa, Sesotho, Setswana, Chivenda, Khoisan, which is a bit of a flawed term because Khoisan is the name of the group, not the language.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, the Chwawa dialect of Khoisan, so that's 7. And then after that, we have Tsonga people as well.
So the first ones are those we have in South Africa, besides Ndebele and Shona, right?
Yes. Yeah, so...
Because your Ndebele is Zulu, and our Ndebele is in Ndebele.
Yeah.
Yes. So what you guys call Ndebele is actually Zulu here in South Africa. And and there are people who hate me for saying that, but I'm telling you, there's Ndebele that you guys speak. It's actually Zulu.
Yeah, linguists say that isiZulu and Zimbabwean Ndebele share 85% of lexicon, and that's why when I came here, I didn't have to learn isiZulu specifically because they're just like tiny differences, but we can understand each other.
Yes.
So I speak isiNdebele when I'm here.
It's like me and those Sotho languages in Zimbabwe and Silozi.
Exactly.
And Silozi, because Barutse and us, we speak the same thing.
Exactly.
Sipedi, Silovedu in Zimbabwe is just the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So
continue, sorry, with those languages.
Okay. Yeah, then apart from that, we have Ndau, we have Manyika, we have Nambia, we have Chichewa, which people think only exists in Malawi, but it doesn't. We also have it in Zimbabwe along the Malawi border. And then we have English and Zimbabwean Sign Language. There are also some languages that aren't official, like we do have Silobedu. Oh, I forgot Chikalanga. Yes. And Chikalanga. There are probably others that I'm not that well versed on, but I do know that at the very minimum, we have those 16 official languages.
So, Skalanga, the problem there. There's Kalanga, there's Kalanga. There's a confusion there. What are those confusions? Is it Kalanga or Karanga and stuff? Can you just take a bit of time to explain that, if you can?
So I did make a video explaining the difference between Karanga and Chikalanga. So in summary, Kalanga was the original language. Most people don't know this, but then it's the basis of so many Southern African languages.
Okay.
It's also the basis of Sesotho.
Yes.
People don't know that, and Sepedi, and but anyway, yeah. So Kalanga people have existed in Southern Africa since at least, I think, if I remember correctly, around 100 AD. That's also where Chivenda stems from. So the video I had made was explaining why Chishona and Chivenda sound similar, and the root is Kalanga people, who are the ancestor. So Kalanga people were the people who were responsible for Mapungubwe and Great Zimbabwe and so many other nations in Southern Africa. So Kalanga.
So what was mainly spoken during the Munamutapa Empire? What was the main language there?
Okay, so the Numutapa.
Just a quick answer so you can go back there. I don't want to confuse you.
Okay.
You can go back to it. But do you know what main language was spoken during the Munamutapa Empire?
It should be Roji.
Rozwi. Rosie or Rozwi?
Roji.
Rose.
The Shona whistling sounds are hard to pronounce.
Maftingo, I battle to say Maftingo because I want to spell it the way, I want to make it to sound the way Masfingo.
No, it's Mashwingo.
Masfingo, yes. So if I say Masfingo, I feel like maybe I butchered it. Let me just spell it.
No, it's difficult. I had to fight to be able, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but then I've pronounced it worse than this. But then the people, during the Mutapa Empire, the dominant people were Roju people, but there were also Makaranga and Zezuru people. There were also Manyika. But then, let me get there. So if I'm backtracking to Kalanga people. So Karanga is a Shona dialect that comes from Chikalanga. So Karanga people arose from the Kalanga people who moved from the Mapungubwe Empire to the Great Zimbabwe Kingdom, which was the next settlement after that. When they were there, they interacted with other Shona speaking groups like Roji, Manyikandao, etc., Zezuru, and that brought about the Shona dialect of Karanga.
Yes.
So people mistake them as the same thing. They're mutually intelligible. Karanga and Kalanga people can understand each other, but then they are two different languages. I guess it's sort of like the relationship between isiZulu and isiNdebele.
Yes.
Yeah.
So as a disclaimer, guys, she's not a historian, she's not a linguist, she's a person coming from Zimbabwe who explains her experiences.
And my research.
Yes. So here's the thing. Zulu people, the R and the L in Zululand, it's always Ilama, Ulama Posa.
Same in Ndebele.
Yes. So the R has always been a problem.
Yeah.
And Sizuru in Zimbabwe, right? There's something called Zuru or Zuru.
Oh, you mean Zezuru?
Zezuru.
It's unrelated. It's a Shona dialect.
Yes, but they say there's a R difficulty there. So I spoke to someone who said there's an R difficulty that links to why it could have been linked because of the substitution of the R and the L. Have you studied anything? Have you got insight about that?
Okay, I actually don't. I've always viewed Shona dialects and Ngoni dialects as being separate, but I think that's actually an interesting point of research, and maybe I will look at that.
Please dwell on it, because they say she's Zuru or something like that. But so interestingly, what you grew up speaking
is Isindebele.
Isindebele.
Yes.
And your Isindebele, how much of South African content do you guys consume when you're home? By the way, just hold it there. Before you answer that, do you want to answer how old are you? So for context.
People are always asking me this question.
Yes, just for the context, so people understand, because they might put a lot of pressure on you for
Yes.
you to know a lot of things that you did not grow up in that era.
Yeah.
So do you wanna explain to them, or when were you born? Let's just put it that. When were you born?
2000.
2000.
Yeah.
So only 2000.
Yeah.
So guys, I'm hosting the 2000 La Zimbabwe. let's see how far we get with this. So because I want to understand, when you grew up, just
Yeah.
how much of the South African content did you consume in TV, radio, and in so you see, in South Africa we consume a lot of westernized media.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's cultural domination by the moment. So that cultural imperialism make our kids consume a lot of
Yeah.
American and European stuff. So how much the influence of South African content did you guys consume?
Probably almost as much as the Western content, because Zimbabweans who can't afford DSTV will have something like OpenView, or
Yeah.
I don't know if it still exists, but then when I was a kid, there was something called Westec, and those had SABC 1, 2, and 3, and then there was also BTV from Botswana.
Okay.
And so because
So those were free to air.
yes, those were free. And then there was also ZBC. But then ZBC, that's the Zimbabwean broadcasting channel. Yeah. But there's only one. And so it's not like we were going out of our way to consume more South African and Western content.
Oh.
It's because there wasn't a lot of local content to watch. So like most of us also grew up watching Generations Isting or
Yes.
ETC and stuff. And so, yeah, I grew up consuming a lot of South African content. I don't know about Shona, people in Mashona land,
Yes.
but then I do know that in the Matabeleland provinces, where we predominantly speak Isindebele, that's probably why we consumed a lot of South African content.
Yes.
Because they speak, most of those shows were speaking in isiZulu.
Yes.
And so there was a level of relatability
Yeah.
when we were watching it. Yeah.
So do you have, how many provinces do you have there in Zimbabwe?
10.
10.
Yeah.
So you consider the Matabele South as a province, Met South, Met North, but what are they? So start with Bulawayo.
Okay, Bulawayo itself is a province, but we just consider it as part of Matabeleland because
Yes.
it's the it's the capital basically.
Yes.
Yeah, so there's Bulawayo, Matabeleland North, Matabeleland South. So that's where you will find predominantly Ndebele speaking people, because Matabele means Ndebele. Yeah. Then you have Harare, Mashonaland East, Mashonaland West, I think. Or is it North and South, yo?
So where is the waterfall?
It's in Matabeleland.
No, which province?
Matabeleland.
Just
Victoria Falls.
Yes, Victoria
Yeah.
Falls. Like, agree, Matabele South, Matabele North.
Okay.
Yes. Should be on
South.
Can be on the south. Should
No,
be
it has to be. I mean, sorry, no.
It should be there.
Yes.
Okay,
no.
let's leave it. Let's leave it. It's
Sorry.
fine. We'll show it here.
Yeah,
We'll
no,
see it here.
no, it should be. North,
And
I think,
the Matabele, you just spoke about Matabele.
Yeah.
So Matabele is what the
Sotho
Sothos
people
called
Ndebele,
Amandebele, and
yeah.
it's stuck as Matabele. Do you guys
yes.
take offense when you are called Matabele?
I think not. It's strange for me when people consider us Matabele, because when we're in Zimbabwe, it's just Ndebele.
Yeah.
We've never referred to ourselves as Matabele,
Yeah.
but then we do consider our province as Matabele land.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I don't know, when people go like, no, these people are not Ndebele, it's Matabele, it's kind of annoying, because it's like, who are you to tell me what my ethnicity
Yeah.
is? Yeah. But then I guess, yeah, and I think because of that, academic separated Zimbabwean Ndebele and South African Ndebele by saying Zimbabwean Ndebele is Northern Ndebele,
Okay.
and then South African Ndebele is Southern Ndebele.
All right, sharp.
Yeah.
How many South African boyfriends have you had? If it's quite a few, you can just say it's quite a few. I want to understand something. How many South African boyfriends have you had since you came here?
Since I came here, I've had 2 South African partners.
And then Zimbabwean?
4 or 5.
Okay, so it's more. So you, even if you are in South Africa, you're still gravitating towards your.
Not necessarily. The reason why I've had more Zimbabwean boyfriends is because the first 18 years of my life I was in Zimbabwe.
No. I'm deliberately speaking about since you came here.
Okay, so
Yes.
I came here since I came here, I had 2 Zimbabwean boyfriends, but then that was because I already knew them from back home.
So
Yeah,
it's a rekindling. It's not a fresh start.
Yeah, I was just carrying it over, yeah.
Okay. It's a cross-border thing.
Yeah.
The reason I want to ask that is, like, how much of this assimilation do you guys go through? And Q Dube says, I'm a Zimbabwean, I'm not going back. You understand? So I want to understand the way you guys come to South Africa, you assimilate, and even if you are fine, South Africans currently, they have regarded Rutendo as persona non grata. And so they say he must go back home. So he says, I would want to go back home.
Rutendo
Matinyarare.
Yes,
So
okay.
he says he wants to go home, but unfortunately he's got kids, and the kids stop him from going home. But that's a matter for another debate. I'm just. So if you guys come to South Africa and you live here and you think, no, this is what I want.
Yeah.
Do you not think it's reason enough to say, because you also don't want the borders, remove the borders, let us just live as one country, be one thing? Because I just want to understand this thing of you seeing yourself as Zimbabweans and living as Zimbabweans, and do you enjoy being a Zimbabwean, xenophobia included, being treated like a second class, well, almost a second class citizen, because you're not South African. I don't know, but
Okay,
how do you feel? How do you feel living in South Africa?
How do I feel living in South Africa?
Yes, amongst those social integration and stuff.
Okay. I think maybe adjusting to living in South Africa is probably harder for Shona people.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
because the relatability is a little difficult.
Yeah.
Because even as Ndebele people, it's a bit hard to find things in common with Shona people because
Yes.
of how different our cultures are. And so I think Shona people are the ones who struggle the
And
most
yes.
when it comes to like assimilating here.
Yes.
Whereas with us, people from Matebele land, a Sotho person can blend in, a Xhosa person, a Ndebele person, Tsonga, etc. And so a lot of the time we are mistaken for being South African.
Yes.
Like for me, Zolega Mazibogo, it sounds very South African,
Yes.
but then I'm Zimbabwean. And so maybe that might be part of the reason why I haven't necessarily experienced a lot of xenophobia, except on TikTok, yeah. When I make videos about Zimbabwean ethnicities and stuff like that, people are like, but you're still Zimbabwean, leave us alone, just go back where you came from. And it's like, I wasn't even talking about that, my guy. I was just saying that we have similarities. I can't change those similarities and how those similarities came about. So, so luckily I feel like people who experience
more.
I think, okay, so where I live, it's probably very sheltered. I live in Hatfield.
Yes. Student village there.
Exactly. And by virtue of it being a university, you have students from everywhere.
Yes.
So like diversity where someone comes from and stuff really isn't a big deal.
Yeah.
And so that's why, Mina, personally in real life, I wouldn't say that I have experienced a lot of xenophobia, although it is very scary when you have xenophobic attacks, because it's like, how can you hate your own people to the point of burning them alive and stoning them to death, whereas no one says anything about white immigrants. It's always black immigrants and Zimbabwean immigrants. And so, yeah, and then you asked, do I like being Zimbabwean?
No. Do you like, so even though you embrace your Zimbabwean roots,
Yes.
do you want more to live in South Africa than in Zimbabwe, in Bulawayo, now that you have tasted the South African cream? Would you want to stay here more or go back to Zimbabwe, to Bulawayo, as it were?
So Bulawayo is a very small town. In terms of infrastructural development, it's pretty much looked the same for quite a long time now. If you look at pictures of Bulawayo in the 90s compared to Bulawayo today, it's almost the same. And so Bulawayo doesn't really have many opportunities for career growth. And so, honestly, unless the situation were to change in Zim, I will likely probably work abroad, whether it's South Africa or in another country or whatever. But I do have a business back home and a family, so I do visit Zim. But then to actually settle there, unless things changed, I don't think so. I would love to, but then, because when I was towards the end of high school, I was like feeling optimistic, you know, being like, no, I want to stay and I want to build my country. But then things have been getting worse and worse economically and also in terms of human rights. And so, and sometimes I get frustrated when I am back home because of how conservative and close-minded Zimbabwean people are. And so sometimes I feel a little out of place because of that. It's extremely misogynistic. It's extremely, conservative. Like when I'm here, I can wear whatever I want without getting harassed. But when I'm in Zimbabwe, if I dare to wear shorts in town, the entire street will be slut shaming me and saying hambo goga, which means go wear something and stuff like that. And so a lot of the time when I get into town and I'm wearing something short, I have to wear my earphones so that I don't hear what they're saying. But then when I have their energy, I swear back at them as well. But then that's one example. And then also a lot of the beliefs that I have, like I believe in LGBTQ rights, but then Zimbabwe is extremely homophobic. And so it's like, I feel like it's a little too conservative for me, whereas South Africa generally has a more liberal mindset, culturally speaking, and other countries. So I think, although I do embrace being Zimbabwean, I do love my Zimbabwean roots. That's why I make videos about Zimbabwe. And it's why I'm also working on a novel that is based on Zimbabwean culture as well. But yeah.
Thank you. Two things. Speak briefly about your business, briefly. What is it that you do? So people could relate to what is it that you do, the business. And number two, you're going to explain, you spoke about the conservativeness, of which I link with you being a feminist. You could dwell on that later, but
yeah.
What business are you doing? And number two, the political environment in Zimbabwe, compare it to South Africa, and if the sanctions are assisting. I'm sorry, I threw three questions.
All right. So,
just a bit the business.
Okay, sorry, my business. Okay, cool. Yes. So I have an events decor business. Okay. So I do the decor for small to big events, like from conferences, birthday parties, and also weddings as well. So yeah, primarily I work at Lavenia Gardens. That's a venue in Bulawayo. And so yeah, that's the business that I have. Then the next, yeah, you might be wondering, that's kind of weird considering that I'm a very political, whatever type of person, whereas that's more artistic. Mm-hmm. But that's because I am an artist as well. I have an art Instagram page. And I actually was conflicted about studying law and politics or art when I was still choosing a degree. So I guess my business allows me to tap into my artistic side, when I'm like conceptualizing and actually doing the decor, for the events that I have to do. Then the third question, the second question.
Compare this, the political space. We are in election season in South Africa.
Yeah.
But you might want to answer for your business and transition it to, has the dropping of the sanctions affected, and does it give you any hope, or it's just going to be the same? And then also speak about the political climate. How free are you in Zim politically and in South Africa, like expressing yourself politically?
So expressing yourself politically, things are a little freer ever since Mugabe was forced to step down. Before, it was dangerous for you to even say anything against the government on social media. Now it's a little better, but then people do occasionally get arrested for their negative posts about the government. People like Fatai Mahere, for example. And so politically speaking, freedom of speech, we don't have the best record.
Is it true that if you see MK party, EFF, and other parties, they could just decide to go then put a gazebo and start their political campaign? Is it true that in Zimbabwe someone has to ask for permission to do that?
Yeah. You have to ask for permission for that. You have to ask for permission to protest. And when you don't ask permission for protests, the police or army step in, and there's usually a lot of repression. That happened during Zimbabwean Lives Matter, where, some people who, I have a friend, Mzingaya Taga, he literally just protested outside his gate. He had a sign, Zimbabwean Lives Matter, stop corruption, blah, blah, blah. By himself, he wasn't making noise, dugu, dugu. Yeah. 2 hours later, he was arrested because he had posted it on social media. Yeah, so...
So the charge is public protest? Or inside? What would the charge be?
It depends on their mood. It depends on their mood.
So as a young Zimbabweans, the excuse was given that, and people call it an excuse, that the reason Zimbabwe was that way wasn't corruption, but it was sanctions. Do you think these sanctions are gonna make you guys prosper as a country?
Okay. So a lot of misconceptions that people have is that the sanctions were blanket sanctions on Zimbabwean industries in general. A lot of them were targeted sanctions, targeted at specific individuals and specific entities. So the individuals and entities that were sanctioned for either human rights abuses or, number 2, corruption. And so... Yeah, so for example, the British sanctions list, it had several individuals, and then only, I think, 2 entities were sanctioned. Okay, but that's if I'm remembering correctly. I have a bad memory, I have ADHD. So it wouldn't really be that consequential if sanctions were lifted. And so now the problem is that there are those people who think that they were targeted at individuals only. Those are the ones that are saying that nothing will change, it's just corruption. Then there are those that think that it targets our economy in general, and so they think it'll fix things. And both sides are not looking at it in a nuanced way. So on the one hand, it doesn't make a difference if you're going to be removing individual sanctions. So in a way, constantly talking about sanctions was a bit of an excuse to justify why things are terrible in Zimbabwe right now, when a lot of it also has to do with maladministration and misappropriation of funds. But then at the same time, with the American sanctions list, there was a list of individuals and 56 entities. And so if you have many entities that are key in our industries, with the way Zimbabwe is such a small country with a limited industry space, a few big corporations or businesses or entities that are being cut off from trading with America, for example, or whatever, it could have significant impacts, in terms of our economy. So I guess those are the two ways to look at it. And I guess it is also important to note that, so I did analyze the sanctions thingy against America. Against Zim from America, and they almost made it impossible for you to get into business with the Zimbabwean government, but you can get into business with other entities and individuals. And I guess it would be a bit one-dimensional to claim that that wouldn't affect our economy. But then, so I guess maybe to some degree, sanctions have impacted our economy because of that. And a lot of the time, some international organizations or whatever, like the IMF, where even though those organizations don't have sanctions against us, sometimes whether aid will come to us or not, or whether investment will happen or not, they just take a glance at, okay, this country is sanctioned, these industries are sanctioned, so let's not, So there is that one side where it's like you can't ignore the fact that sanctions will have some sort of impact with the way Zimbabwe is small. But then on the other hand, you need to be realistic and acknowledge the fact that there's a lot of misappropriation of funds that happens in Zimbabwe. I think maybe the most dramatic example I can give is there was a time when China gave us like 37 million US dollars or something in aid. Then our government said that China gave us 4 million. And then China was like, no, we gave them 37 million. And so, so I wish I was making this up.
Mugabe time or Mnangagwa time? Can't remember.
I have to be careful about what I'm saying at the same time. But
hold it, because I wanted to ask you that. So Mnangagwa didn't atone, didn't apologize, didn't show remorse for participating or for leading the Kagura Hundi. And is that, according to you, is that a link to him not being removed from the sanctions?
Okay.
If not, just yes or no, or if you want to dwell more, you can.
Okay.
Because I want to check how free are you to speak. So you see, Mnangagwa is feared, but because he's a statesman, he can't be as before as he was before. The crocodile would call people cockroaches, and people would fear such things. So what you are doing, you are not being hostile to your government. Rutendo, on the other hand, is criticized because whenever he gets the platform to speak about Zimbabwe, he speaks about ZANU-PF in good light and good successes, and people say, if it is so good, why are people risking their lives to jump to this side?
Exactly.
So you as a Zimbabwean, how does it make you feel that even when you are this side, because you got family that side, you still find it difficult to speak the honest truth of what's happening in Zimbabwe?
Okay. So just to round up in one sentence what I was saying before.
Yes.
I do believe that removing sanctions might not make a difference. But we'll see. I guess we'll see. It's up to the government to prove people wrong. Then what you asked, you asked me many different things. Do I think the Kukura Hundi thing is why Mnangagwa isn't removed from sanctions?
Yes.
Yes, definitely. Because he was, apart from Kukura Hundi, there were also the whole situation where the land reform situations where land farms were being taken from white farmers. That was part of the reason why they were also put on the sanctions list, but then also human rights violations after that. And so many entities and individuals were removed from the US sanctions list, but Mnangagwa and the people who are at the top of ZANU-PF were left there on the sanctions list. Then the third question that you asked, how do I feel about Rutendo when he's like speaking good about ZANU-PF and stuff like that, and that everything is great? So I feel like for him, this person is very privileged and lived a very privileged life.
Yes.
And so he doesn't experience the hardship that the average Zimbabwean experiences. And so he then projects his own personal experiences and then makes it a one-size-fits-all, that every Zimbabwean is also happy and stuff like that.
Yes.
But then the economic situation is really bad. And as an upper working class person, I don't struggle as much as the average Zimbabwean. But then, like, the average Zimbabwean, poor Zimbabweans are really suffering. They are struggling. Street vendors are being made to pay taxes and stuff like that. So people are really struggling. But then for him, this person is very affluent. And so it's easy for him to always give a positive perspective because he's not affected by the economic situation at the moment. So yeah, then lastly, the last question you asked, something to do with South Africa. How
Yes.
I feel.
How the comparison, how free are you?
Okay.
So, meaning in other words, if you are in South Africa, you see, we're free. We can speak about, in my channel, I criticize Ramaphosa, I criticize Mbeki, I criticize Zuma, and people hate me for that. There are people who don't like it when I do it. But there's a sense of, he has freedom to do that if someone does wrong.
Yeah.
But I believe it can be as free as that in Zimbabwe, and I want you to compare it and how does it make you feel. And if it's too much, you can tell me Mashen, then you're going too far.
Okay. Also, just to round up what I just said about Rutendo in one sentence, this person is also strongly affiliated with ZANU-PF, so he has benefits according to that. And so it's not unexpected that he's always going to give things in a positive light. Okay, then how do I feel? Okay, how free is it for you to speak against the government when you're outside the country? It's definitely a lot safer than if you're actually in the country. And the freedom of speech thing is very unfortunate because it's like, personally for me as a social commentator and my passion for social justice and everything, I'm a very expressive person and I always give my opinion, and it's a bit frustrating when I have to be a little careful sometimes. But then it is safer for you to, like, if you're living outside Zimbabwe, and I think a lot of the time if you're not that big a deal of a person, they leave you alone. Whereas if you are Fatai Mahere or something like that, then that's when...
I'll wait for you to come home.
I don't know, but I think I'll leave it there.
I know, let's leave it there. Okay, anything that you think South Africans doesn't understand about a Zimbabwean person? So from the conversation that we had, you and I, here in this podcast, am I wrong? Is it wrong for me to think Zo comes from a well-off family, Uchi's girl, ne?
I suppose. The middle class doesn't exist in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll say that I'm upper working class.
Yes.
I think I am more privileged than the average Zimbabwean.
Yes.
I got to go to a private school.
Yes.
And so forth. So I guess people will refer to me as a cheese girl.
Yes.
But then still, my parents tried to raise me in a very, very balanced way. So during school, we'd stay at home in the suburbs, but then during the school holidays, we had to go ekaya to the rural areas with our grandmother. We'd spend half of it in the rural areas where we'd have to work on the fields, help with all the chores and stuff like that. And then for the other half, we would go to my other grandma who lives in a township. And so as much as fine, I had a more privileged life, my parents tried to make sure that I don't become a snob and that I don't...
you don't see one life in one...
Exactly. And I see people from different walks of life as equal. So when I go to a township and stuff, like, it's nothing new to me. I'm not judging or anything. Like, it's chilled. If I go ekhaya and stuff, I will... If I have to ubasa umlilo and do the cooking, sure. If I have to do the cleaning, sure. If I have to help in the fields, sure. And I think maybe it would be nice if Black parents also had this approach in general, because of a lot of the time, Black people think that a sign of success is being detached from your culture, you know, speaking polished English and going to a fancy school and stuff like that. And as someone who grew up in the private school space, I've seen so many Black people in private schools who don't even know how to speak their languages, who don't... They mispronounce their own names. And, you know, and I think that's a shame. And I guess that's something that I'm really glad that my parents did, where they made me really proud of my culture as an indigenous Black person. And, yeah, but then you are right when you're saying that I am more privileged than the average. Yeah.
How many... so we've got NSFAS in South Africa. Do you think we've got such opportunities in Zimbabwe?
No, we don't.
And so universities, only rich people go to universities?
Yeah, but then I think they try not to make universities too expensive, so that it's a little more affordable. And I think sometimes the government does give scholarships, but then it's just like scholarships.
Exceptional.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a thing like NSFAS. Yeah, there isn't a lot of like social security things. So, for example, very poor South Africans can get social grants. Social grants don't exist in Zim. So like our social...
How do they cushion the economic hardships for poor people there?
They have to make a plan.
Ish.
And, you know, and recently the taxes have been increased. You know, those vendors who have a tiny little stall at the corner of the street selling sweets and stuff like that, they now have to pay for their stand. And it's like, where are they going to get that money? And so Zimbabwe is a very capitalist country that doesn't really account for the experiences of poor people.
There's a news agency in Zimbabwe that published that the Zimbabwean minister is banning spaza shops for people who are not Zimbabweans. And I'll show it here. And so when I spoke about it on TikTok, people came for me. Even though I do show it that here it is, here's the minister, they're trying to control spaza shops in Harare. In Zimbabwe, the minister doesn't want it. Is there anything similar to that?
No, this is my first time hearing of that.
Okay, but do you have foreigners in
we
Bulawayo
do.
And who are waiting spaza shops?
Yeah, we don't mind. Like, we have many Nigerians, and I guess we also have Malawians. People from neighboring countries, and also some Mozambicans, because right now the situation is a little hostile. And so a lot of refugees, human rights refugees, do come to Zimbabwe. And it's honestly not a big deal for us. We don't have problems with foreigners, and we don't have a problem with them having spaza shops or even normal shops or anything. We just see them as our equals. I think as Zimbabweans, we're really big on Ubuntu. And so for us, it doesn't, your nationality, or at least for citizens in general, your nationality is honestly not important to us, you know? So I'm surprised about that.
So you're saying Nigerians are behaving in Zimbabwe?
Yeah, or if they aren't,
You do have a Nigerian community in Zimbabwe because they are everywhere? So are you saying that they're well behaved?
I think so. I've never heard anything negative about them. but then also those who are not well behaved, we look at them as individuals, not their nationality. So if a Nigerian person is not behaving, that has nothing to do with their nationality. It has to do with their character.
Him.
Exactly.
Him,
so we deal with
them.
people individually. We don't then use that to generalize all Nigerians and say that, oh, Nigerians are doing this or that. Like, no, it's that person who's doing this or that. Whereas I've seen more generalizing from South Africans when it comes to Zimbabweans and Nigerians. Yes, Zimbabweans and Nigerians are doing this or that. But then for me personally, the Zimbabwean people that I know, I like, who are living in South Africa, they're making an honest living, not doing anything problematic and stuff. And so I feel like they take the actions of a few people, then use it to then generalize everyone. You know, when we're reduced to criminals, as if high crime rates didn't exist during apartheid, because they did. The crime rates existed because economically, as much as SA's economy is good, it doesn't really benefit the average black person because it was set up to benefit white people. And what happened was Mandela just said, you guys are now free, but then not a lot was done for equity to close the wealth gap, which is why South Africa is the most unequal country in the world. But then, sorry, I'm now digressing. But then I'm just like looking at different factors for a person committing crime. And so, like I said, for us in Zimbabwe, no, we don't see you as your nationality. We see you as a person. So, yeah, that's why when you're saying, are they behaving, like, I had to pause to think about it because it's like we don't even look at it like that. Yeah.
So you're saying in Zimbabwe, Zimbabweans generally accept, welcome, and embrace people coming from outside Zimbabwe?
Yeah, because we even have refugee camps for refugees from other African countries. As most people know.
As in camps, tents, camps, or maybe just segregated areas? In South Africa, we don't have refugee camps.
Oh.
They come, they integrate, they live amongst us.
Okay, maybe the best word is to say refugee communities.
Okay.
Maybe one of the most well-known is the Josiah Tongogara refugee camp, where that's where you find human rights refugees that are coming from other countries like Congo, Mozambique, etc., etc. And we built a school for them. We have clinics for them. We have, basically, we try to set up an environment where they don't have to live as an outcast and stuff. And so, so we don't mind refugees. We just try to do it in a more orderly way, where it's like they don't come here, then they become destitute. We try to find a way for them to be able to integrate into our societies. Even though as a country we don't have a lot of money, we still do our best to accommodate like needy people who come and live here. And so, I don't know, when I was seeing the hostility from South Africans towards Zimbabweans, where they're literally burning people alive and stuff. And it was such a shock to me because immigrants are not a problem for us. Yes, our healthcare system is in shambles right now. Yes, our economy is in shambles. Yes, we don't have the most money. But then at the end of the day, these African refugees are our siblings. And we don't have a lot, but then we still accept them and try to make sure that they can survive in our communities. Yeah.
Anything you want to say in closing? Anything that you think you wanted to say and you couldn't get a chance?
Yeah, I came here with the mindset, Uti, I'm just going to wing it. So let me see, is there anything that I would like to say?
Like misconceptions, especially about the people, why do they come here? Especially people who are destitute. I always think the reason sometimes South Africans take things for granted is because they have not lived or they have not seen how people live in destitute.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sometimes I look at certain conditions and I think that's why people risk crossing the crocodile infested
Yeah, exactly.
rivers to come here.
Yeah.
So where I grew up, we had a community of Mozambican people, and the stories we would hear, we were too young to fully understand. So they literally have to cross from Mozambique, walk for days through Kruger National Park.
Yeah.
Days and nights walking through Kruger National Park from Mozambique to get to Palabora. And like, these are real stories. But we're too young to actually understand. So now I'm actually understanding. Can you imagine at night, pitch black nights in Kruger National Park, where you have to climb a tree to sleep, because they would climb a tree to sleep. And I'm talking about fellow Africans who have to climb a tree to sleep inside Kruger National Park at night. Lions can fetch you there. Leopards can fetch you there, just to walk through to get to South Africa, because there's a better life that side. And South Africans may not understand.
Yeah, they don't.
They may not understand. What is it that you want to say about that?
For someone to risk crossing a crocodile-infested river and to come to a place where your people have been stoned and burned to death just for being Zimbabwean, like, this is someone, it's not an easy decision to make for you to choose to come here, knowing all of that. You guys, when I say things are bad in Zimbabwe economically, like, it's not just vibes. Like, it's just that the people, the Zimbabweans
Can you contextualize it in everyday stuff?
Okay.
2 liters of Coke plus minus, how much would it cost?
A 2 liter of?
Of Coke? About the same price?
Okay, wait, maybe let me... Okay, first thing that pops up in my mind, sugar.
Because I want it to be relatable to South Africans. Because
so sugar at the moment, 2 kgs is going for $3 to $4. That translates to $3 is like 60 rands for a 2 kg little pack of sugar, for example. And what other example can I give? Bread goes for, if I convert, maybe like 22 rands or something. And
that's normally what we pay here.
Well, bread here is like 17, 18 rands.
Not,
But anyway, I think the sugar one is like the drastic example I can give. And recently taxes were increased, which is why prices have also increased, because paying 60 rands for sugar is like insane. And mealie meal goes for about $5, which translates to 100 rands. And so things are extremely expensive in Zim. When I came back from my internship in Europe, my money finished so quickly. I was so shocked. I was like, how is this happening? Like, things are definitely cheaper here, which is why Zimbabweans with cars will go and do shopping, grocery shopping in Musina or in Botswana, because things are way cheaper there. Like, if you buy groceries in Zim, you will cry. It's insanely expensive. And if things are expensive for me as an upper working class person, I can't even imagine for poor people who actually like don't even have money. So like, one of my assistants for my business, you know, when she started working for me, like she only had one pair of shoes, and those shoes were like almost finished. And for me, I realized that as much as things are bad for me, things are worse for other people, because I have so many pairs of shoes and this person didn't even have one that is functional. And then our school fees right now is also insane. Sorry, I'm just trying to think of relatable examples.
So do you pay school fees? Like, I'm not talking about like private schools and stuff, like a normal, in South African village schools mostly are non-fee.
Oh, you have to pay. Even if you're from a village, you have to pay school fees.
Like in poor villages, people still have to pay school fees?
Yes.
So is that, where does that goes into the teachers' salaries, or?
I guess, and to keep the school running. But Yeah, that's why you have
This narrative of Zimbabwean being more educated than South Africans, or being the most educated people in Africa, do you subscribe to that?
Yes, I do. The reason why I say that is when I first came here during my first year, so one of the modules I had to take was English literature, and I would look at the module group chats, and South Africans were struggling with things I'd already learned 2 years ago. And I often had to help people. Like, for me, first year English was such a vibe.
Yeah.
Like, I had to put bare minimum effort because I had already learned all those things 2 years ago in high school. And so, and my other friends in different degrees also had the same experience. I had a friend who was doing maths, and she said for the first year in maths, like, it was such a breeze for her because she had already learned those things 2 years before.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I think maybe one of the advantages we have is that we do an extra year of high school. And so I don't know how, for South Africa, you just join high school and, like, your most important exam is just immatric only. So for us, we have 3 levels. You have the ordinary levels exams that you write when you are Form 4. What does that translate to?
Form 4 is grade 11.
It's grade 10.
Okay.
Yeah, grade 10. And then after that, you have to do advanced subsidiary the next year. Then advanced levels the year after that. And the Zimbabwean education system is slightly modeled according to the Cambridge International education system. And so I think I can most certainly say that in Zimbabwe, our education is definitely very good, and our pass rate is high. You have to get more than 50% to pass.
So you're saying an average Zimbabwean matriculant, I don't know what you call it. What's the school leavers qualification? Is it metric? What do you call it? Form 5?
No, if you stopped at ordinary level, it's O levels, and then the next one is AS levels. Then the final one is A levels.
A levels.
Yeah.
So that's A levels. What could be the equivalent of metric?
Metric, maybe O levels.
O levels.
Yeah.
Okay, an O leveler. Okay, but when do you leave school?
You can leave school after your O levels.
I'm trying to draw a distinction that is comparable to South Africa. South Africa, you do your primary school, you do your high school, and then after high school, this is where you get your matric, and then you are doing what we call tertiary. Anything it's high education is HGT. So after matric, so it's a school leavers certificate, a school senior certificate. So this is where you leave schooling, and then you go to tertiary. So what is the equivalent for that in Zimbabwe? I want to compare a South African matriculant and a matriculant from Zimbabwe. That's what I'm attempting.
Okay. So for you to go to university in Zimbabwe, you need to have your advanced levels. And that one is, I guess I could say it's 2 levels above metric. Yeah. Which I guess is why I was saying that the things that I was doing in first year I'd already done 2 years back.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you don't so you don't have anything between. Okay. You only have university. You don't have technical colleges, technical blah blah.
Okay, so it's primary, secondary, tertiary. Technical colleges, you can only do them after getting your O or A levels.
Very confusing. Let you.
Okay, technical colleges are considered tertiary education.
Okay.
You go to them after high school.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you leave high school with?
You leave high school if you choose to stop at grade 10. You leave high schools with your O levels after you've written your O level, your ordinary level exams. Then, if you want to go a step further, you can leave with your AS levels. It's the next one. And the furthest in high school is advanced level. And so that's what you live with. We call them your A levels. For you, you say, I have my metric. For us, we say, I have my A levels.
Okay, so A levels is equivalent to metric.
It's above metric.
It's above metric.
Yeah.
Okay.
Metric is like O levels.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, and most well, if you're a privileged Zimbabwean, most of us, we do our A levels, and then those people who stop at O levels are typically those who can't afford it. Yeah, but then as much as our education system is
So
really
ordinary levels is matric.
yeah.
Okay. All right. No,
Yeah.
I understand. Maybe that's where the difference is. So someone who did matric and someone who did O levels would be comparable.
Yeah.
All right. No, thank you very much. I think you've painted a picture. You gave us an eye into the lives of an ordinary Zimbabwean from the cheese girl's perspective.
Yeah, but whatever I have said
Yes.
about how hard it is, just know that it is way worse for the average Zimbabwean.
Yeah.
I'm just privileged.
Yeah.
But then things are extremely bad right now.
Yeah.
Because if I'm telling you that a poor person who's a vendor has to pay taxes, I was so shocked. It's you have to pay $100 for your stand, which is like 2,000 rands, and it's like, where will they get that money? And so a lot of people are stranded and they can't do anything to earn a living because everything is so expensive, and the government is putting, you can't even have your home selling thing where you're selling things from home. You still have to get a license for that, and those licenses are expensive and have to be renewed. And so in terms of you trying to do business in Zimbabwe, it's very expensive. And even when you're working there, a huge portion of your money is going to go to taxes, because they were increased drastically of recent. And that's why Zimbabwean people typically seek economic opportunities elsewhere, because number one, most of their money is being taken by taxes. Number two, the cost of living is too high for the low salary that you're typically going to be getting. So that's why you have Zimbabweans literally risking their life to come and live in SA, because things are bad. There's a lot of malnutrition that is going on.
Did you go home to vote?
Unfortunately, I couldn't vote because I was in Switzerland.
Okay.
During
What's
voting
the voting
season.
age?
18.
18.
Yeah.
So you're already past 18.
Yeah.
If you had the opportunity to vote, who would you have chosen? Is it a secret? You want to keep it a secret?
No, I probably would have voted for CCC. Yeah.
Okay. Do you feel... Okay. Well, CCC has been typically... I don't know what disorganized or reassembled or reset button. Do you think as a Ndebele woman, Ndebele young woman, you feel you are represented politically with people from Mtwagazi not being politically, without having political elites in there? Do you vote on tribal lines? Do you think parties like ZANU-PF, who are more aligned with the Shonas, cater for you as a young...
No. No, I wouldn't say that. Which is why I probably wouldn't vote for them. Things have been getting worse over the past 44 years that they've been in power. So I would probably vote for something alternative. Then do I feel represented by ZANU-PF? No, because like you said, it's typically a very Shona party, and they set a precedent of like focusing on Shona people in terms of how they cater to people. So for example, during Mugabe's time, he gave speeches in Shona only, and so that made other ethnicities feel alienated by that, and they couldn't relate to them, because it's like, okay, we can clearly see who this party is most important to.
Would you marry a Zimbabwe? Would you marry a Shona person?
Yeah, I would. I think I've mostly dated Shona people. Like, I don't have anything against them. Like, I'm half Shona.
The reason I'm asking you this question is I've got my Ndebele brothers who are watching this and who are like, okay, this one. And a lot of the questions I'm drawing from the experiences I've lived with them and the Shona people that I've lived with.
Okay.
And according to you, if you are a Shona, if you are in Ndebele, if you marry a Zimbabwean, if you marry a Shona person from Zimbabwe, even if you live in South Africa,
yeah,
do you think you have sold out?
No, like honestly, for me, a Zimbabwean is a Zimbabwean. I don't think it's unfortunate that people are so attached to dividing themselves according to tribal lines.
You know, I'll tell you why. Because they say when you're a woman,
Yeah.
you don't feel the wrath is equal, similar to a man. So, for example, the xenophobic attacks and the xenophobic sentiment that the Zimbabwean guys feel in South Africa,
Yeah.
it's not as harsh to women. Do you understand where I'm going? That's what they say. So I want to ask you. So, do you feel marginalized, or do you feel oppressed by Shona people when you're in Zimbabwe?
Okay. Luckily, I live in Matabele land, where
Yes.
Ndebeles are the majority.
Yes.
So I haven't experienced too much tribalism compared to when I'm in Mashona land. So I think as much as Gukura Hundi happened, the genocide against Ndebeles and non-Shona people was mostly directed at non-Shona people, right? That wasn't something that Shona civilians did. Unlike the Rwandan genocide, where it was Hutus versus Tutsis, and the Hutus, they were able to participate in it. It wasn't just the army and stuff. But then in Zimbabwe's case, during that genocide, it was strictly the government that was carrying out the genocide, not the average person. And a lot of Shona people didn't even know that it was happening because media was state controlled, and because it was happening in Matabele land, not Mashona land. And so, like, there is tribalism, right? But then,
so you are not pressured. It's not so fierce that you are obliged to participate in this hate. That's what you say. You don't feel this inherent pressure to appease your Mandebele people, Mandebele, by hating or not associating with Shona people. Is that what you're saying? You are free to associate.
Yeah, like, I think if I even have to think about it, but if I'm thinking about it, I think I have just as many Ndebele friends as I have Shona friends, and you know, it's never been that.
So when you are with Shona people, what do you speak? Because I mean, you mostly English.
Yeah.
You mostly English. So people who are not speaking a lot of English, when they are with, when they're in a circle.
Okay, when I'm with Shona people, if we're in a mixed circle, we typically speak in English.
Yes.
Or if they grew up in Bulawayo.
Actually, 2,000 guys, uses 2,000 will speak more English. So that's why I wanted that disclaimer. So it's important because I want to understand when it's typically a lot of people. What language would they gravitate to?
Okay, if it's mostly Ndebele people, we will mix. I realize that I code switch a lot.
Yeah.
I don't even notice it, but then I often start a sentence in Ndebele, then I finish it in English, and And
How
I
good
think
is your Shona?
I can't speak Shona because I grew up in Matabele land, so there was no need for me to learn to speak Shona. But then I do find that there is like a little arrogance from Shona people who come from Mashona land and come to Matabele land, and that they don't want to learn the languages of the local people there, and they expect everyone to learn Isishona to accommodate them and stuff. But then it's like, if you're going to be in a place where that is predominantly Ndebele speaking, it doesn't make sense for you.
So Umtwakazi who was here, the reason I asked that question is, he says traveling as a Ndebele person traveling, he took his wife to Bulawayo.
Yeah.
And he got so harassed. His wife is South African. They went there and he got so harassed. It was.
Wait, is in Ndebele?
Yeah, he's in Ndebele. So the problem is, you even find like the security, traffic cops and traffic
They
cops.
speak Shona.
Yes, they speak Shona. and
Yeah.
they are hired, and they will as soon as, because I mean, it's almost like in everywhere in the country, a Shona person can know that your Shona is not from a pure
Yeah.
Shona, and he will mistreat you.
Yeah.
And the thing that they want from you, he says, I think he said in Twagazi, you'll correct me in the comments line, he said, I think the bribes only were around 5,000. You can imagine the bribes only, he's talking about bribes only, were around 5,000. So, and so I'm trying to imagine me, a Mampara South African who can't even speak even a single language. The treatment might be very worse. So so you clearly don't experience it like he experiences it.
All right.
Just make sure that you watch the podcast because he explains it.
Cool. All right. So as I was still saying, you know, if you're in Matabele land, it's better.
Yeah.
But then I know that Ndebeles who have gone to Mashona land experienced a lot of harassment and discrimination because of the fact that they were Ndebele.
Yeah.
And it's weird to see that a lot of civil servants and people and policemen and armies, they are mostly Shona. Like,
yes, he says even universities, the teachers, the everything.
Shona, yes. And the thing is, so there is like some discrimination of non-Shona people that still happens. Because you would think that if you're in Matabele land, most of the teachers and the policemen would be Ndebele or non-Shona, but then they're mostly, I can't say about the teachers, it's been a while since I was at school, but then if you go to army members and policemen, they speak isiShona. And even when they're in Bulawayo, they'll speak to you in Shona and expect you to speak in Shona.
And when you don't want, you get hostile treatment.
Yeah, when you don't want to, like, how can you be Zimbabwean and not speak Shona?
That's what they say.
I've heard that so many times. And like when I was in first year and I went to the Zimbabwean society on campus, everyone was speaking Shona. Everyone was expecting me to be able to speak Shona. I felt so out of place.
Here in South Africa? Oh, I can understand.
Yeah, but anyway, but things are better in Matabele land, honestly, because
you cushion from a lot of things.
Yeah, exactly, compared to when you go to Mashona land. And then in terms of being harassed, so he's in Ndebele. He has a South African wife.
Yes. What
ethnicity is she?
I know, but I don't want to go there.
Okay.
Because it's not authorized by him. But just watch it. But you.
All right.
Yeah. But all I'm saying is it rare for Amandebele to have South African wife? But she's not Zulu, by the way. Yeah.
It's not rare.
Okay.
Like, like if the South African of it is Nguni, a lot of the time we just consider you as one of our own. Like we'll be like, this person is from, I say, what do we call them? Injiva. But then, me personally, yes. I have not seen Ndebele people discriminating South Africans because of how culturally similar we are.
Yes.
So, but then I'm not going to then trivialize the experiences of your friend, because I mean, as a Ndebele person, I guess privilege is often invisible to the person who is privileged.
True story.
So if that's what the wife experienced, and if other South Africans say they've experienced that, their experience is valid, and I'm not going to invalidate that and say that, no, but then Ndebele people are accepting and stuff like that. I don't get to choose what you experienced. But generally speaking, I do know that Ndebele people are very accepting, because Matabele land is a very diverse province with many different ethnicities. But anyway.
Flying into Bulawayo and driving there, two different experiences for obvious reasons, because you will not get to see how wide the country is and the cultures and those rudimentary checkpoints. I want to close and thank you for coming and thank you for sharing light, and I hope I have not compromised you.
No.
Thank you very much. So,
sure.